This was the most desperate day for the girl. She had waited 3 years for her boyfriend to return, but the moment they met, he told her he was already married. Yet just as she was heartbroken and shocked, she suddenly noticed that his gaze seemed a little blank, so she instinctively waved her hand in front of his eyes. And sure enough, the boy did not react at all. She deliberately asked him how she looked today, but he replied that she seemed quite energetic, and Juhi could no longer control her emotions.
지금 울고 있어. 눈물 안 보여?
Junha realized that his disguise had been exposed, so he hurriedly got up and tried to escape, only to find that he had forgotten the way he had come. In the summer when he was 17, the rich young lady Juhi came from the city to visit her grandfather in the countryside, and the poor boy Junha was captivated by her delicate beauty. Awakening to his first feelings of love, he could not resist greeting her, never expecting that she would wave back so generously. It was precisely this fleeting encounter that ignited an uncontrollable spark of youth between them. When Juhi first arrived in the countryside, she was curious about everything. Even the dung beetle that Junha pulled from cow dung did not disgust her, and she eagerly went forward to take a look. Wanting to see more of the strange sights in the countryside, she even took the initiative to invite Junha to take her on an adventure in the haunted house. Facing such a sudden invitation from the girl of his dreams, Junha of course agreed without hesitation. The next day, Junha arrived early by the river full of anticipation, and soon after, Juhi showed up on time. But as they rode across with excitement in their hearts, they had no idea that danger was silently approaching. They soon arrived at an abandoned house, and the desolate silence sent chills down their spines. Just as they ventured deeper inside, Juhi suddenly missed a step and fell, and Junha rushed to help her up. But at that moment, a shadow suddenly darted past behind them, so he gathered his courage and slowly pulled open the suspicious door. When he screamed and ran out, Juhi only felt more curious, so she too gathered her courage and stepped forward one step at a time. It turned out that the so-called haunted house was nothing more than a shelter for wanderers. Juhi had never experienced such thrilling excitement, and it was also the first time she felt the joy that Junha brought her. But just as they were about to head back, a heavy rain arrived unexpectedly, and worse, their small boat was swept away by the rushing river, leaving them no choice but to find shelter from the rain. In a careless moment, Juhi twisted her ankle, and upon seeing this, Junha immediately crouched down and carried her on his back to a shabby melon shed. He even kindly wrung out his clothes for her to wipe her drenched body, and afterward he stole a big watermelon. Junha's rough way of cutting the melon stunned Juhi, for having grown up in the city, she had never imagined that a watermelon could be eaten like this. She became increasingly fascinated with the rugged boy before her, and feelings quietly grew in her heart. They finally reached another ferry crossing, but night had already fallen, and the fireflies by the river deeply attracted the girl, for she had only ever seen them in books. Seeing her fascination, Junha caught one and gave it to her, and this gesture successfully captured her heart. But soon, Juhi's grandfather found them, and to express her feelings, she gave her necklace to Junha as their token of love. She was then carried away by the servants. But Juhi's grandfather gave Junha a resounding slap across the face, warning him to recognize his own place. It seemed that their fate had ended there, but destiny was playing the cruelest joke. When school started in the fall, Junha's best friend Tai-Su came to him, asking for help writing a love letter to his fiancée, and as he spoke, he pulled out a photograph. But the moment Junha's eyes landed on the photo, he froze, for the girl in it was the very Juhi he thought of day and night. Tai-Su said he had never actually met his fiancée, as the engagement had been arranged by both families for the sake of power. However, Junha did not reveal that he knew Juhi, as he held on to a selfish desire of his own. He could only write letter after letter in Tai-Su's name, pouring out his own longing and affection. When Tai-Su praised his writing, only Junha knew that it was his own love and regret being expressed. Soon, Tai-Su received a reply, and inside were also 2 tickets for Juhi's music performance, so he excitedly dragged Junha along to watch. The moment Juhi elegantly stepped onto the stage, Junha's heart was instantly pulled tight, and he suddenly stood up, unable to control himself. his eyes deeply following her every move. But Joo-hee did not notice Junha's burning gaze. He stared at that familiar and enchanting face, and his longing surged like a tidal wave, deeply intoxicated by her charm, unable to free himself. The piano piece that Joo-hee played was melodious and moving, yet tinged with indescribable sadness, as if the melody was telling the emotions and struggles hidden deep in her heart. When the performance came to an end, Joo-hee shone like a brilliant star, and Tae-soo also presented her with a bouquet of flowers. But with one unintentional glance back, Joo-hee's eyes passed through the noisy crowd and locked onto Junha holding flowers in the audience, and in that instant an unexplainable flutter arose in her heart. Yet the restraints of reality were like invisible chains, making it impossible for her to acknowledge Junha at that moment, and she could only turn away and leave with her elders. And likewise, Junha did not have the courage to present his flowers to her. As he sat alone on a bench with the flowers in his arms, heartbroken, he suddenly saw Joo-hee running back alone to the concert hall. At that moment, he understood that Joo-hee must have come back for him, so he quickly ran toward her. When Joo-hee found the hall empty, she hurried outside to search, and at last, they finally met again, outside. At this moment, thousands of words seemed unnecessary, because the tender smiles exchanged through their eyes had already surpassed all language in the world, and their deep longing and endless love flowed gently and firmly like a stream. Joo-hee accepted the flowers that Junha handed to her.
그리고 비창 너무 잘 들었어요.
더 연습해야 돼요.
Because Joo-hee had only used an excuse to come out temporarily, and her family was still waiting for her, their second meeting ended in haste. Even so, Junha was so excited that he could not help but wave his arms in joy. From then on, they often secretly wrote letters behind Tae-soo's back. One side was the girl he loved deeply, and the other was his closest brother. Junha's awkward identity was like an invisible shackle, trapping him tightly in this whirlpool of emotions. But the love burning in his heart was already like a fire that could no longer be extinguished. This was their third meeting, a school-organized social dance, and because Tae-soo was also present, they had to pretend not to know each other. But their affectionate glances were like stars shining in the night sky, constantly passing on the feelings in their hearts. Every exchange of glances was the collision and resonance of their souls, and that deep affection had already gone beyond words, blending into the depths of their spirits. Although they could not openly express their love, the emotions silently passed between them, made their hearts even more closely connected. Yet this short encounter was like a fleeting blossom, beautiful but brief, and as Junha watched Tae-soo escort Joo-hee away, an unspeakable sadness surged in his heart. But just as Tae-soo politely said goodbye to Joo-hee, she paused at the doorway, wishing that Junha would appear behind her at that moment. What she did not expect was that when she was about to press the doorbell, the porch light suddenly went out, and as she turned around, Junha was quietly standing under the dim street lamp. The light in Joo-hee's eyes shimmered warmly, blending with the glow of the street lamp, casting a tender and romantic atmosphere. At this moment, time seemed to stand still, leaving only two hearts closely leaning on each other in the night, and this was perhaps the most touching, romantic moment. But even though they loved each other enough to pledge their lives together, it was destined not to be recognized by the world, for Joo-hee's marriage had long been confined by her parents. What was even more unexpected was that Tae-soo, who originally did not agree with his parents' arranged marriage, gradually fell in love with Joo-hee as well. So he held flowers and firmly expressed his feelings, which left Joo-hee deeply confused and uneasy, because her heart had long belonged to Junha. Yet the engagement with Tae-soo was like a towering wall she could not break, and in order not to continue hurting everyone, Joo-hee resolutely broke up with Junha. Whenever their familiar signal light flashed in the night, Joo-hee could only force herself to ignore it, enduring the pain in her heart. But unwilling to give up, Junha came to her again in the rain, trying to awaken the last flicker of love. Yet Joo-hee held back her sorrow and spoke words that went against her heart.
이거 쓰고 집에 가. 비 맞지 말고.
Her resolute words were like a sharp blade, stabbing into Junha's heart in an instant and shattering all his illusions about love. His heart was as desolate and lonely as the pouring rain, and his persistence and longing for love gradually faded away in the cold storm, leaving only a wrecked heart behind. Still unwilling, he came to Juhi's house and kept flashing their signal light, but at that moment, Juhi appeared behind him.
잠깐만 열어줘. 나도 얘기 좀 해.
마찬가지야. 헤어지는 건 헤어지는 거야. 이건 너란 말이야.
Juhi forcefully pushed away his hand and left helplessly. In order to be with Juhi forever, a bold plan quietly formed in Junha's heart, and the next day he went directly to Taesu and confessed everything about himself and Juhi. Then, he waited for Taesu's anger, but unexpectedly, Taesu did not strike him, because he had long known about Junha and Juhi's relationship. In this contest of love, Taesu chose to retreat on his own, for he deeply understood that true love must be mutual.
근데 그 목걸이 우리 아버지가 안 보게 해라. 큰일 난다.
But it was precisely this generous decision that nearly cost him his life. With Taesu's withdrawal, the love between Junha and Juhi was able to continue, and even during the winter vacation, they still wrote letters every day to express their feelings. But secrets cannot be hidden forever, and soon Juhi's father discovered what she was doing, and the news quickly reached Taesu's family. Taesu's father was furious when he learned the truth, unable to accept such a sudden change, and the engagement he had worked so hard to secure with a congressman's daughter could not be abandoned so easily. He lashed Taesu with a belt until he swore he would win Juhi back. Only then did his father stop. But when facing his closest brother, he did not reveal what had happened during the winter vacation. Instead, he pulled out the belt and said with a trembling voice,
이놈이 자꾸 날 때린다. 그래서 이놈을 잡아왔지.
Taesu's strange words left Junha confused, so he casually said the death sentence. Junha felt puzzled by Taesu's unusual behavior, and after a while, he went to look for him, only to witness a scene that he would regret for the rest of his life. Unable to fulfill his vow to his father, Taesu could only end his own life to free everyone from this predicament. Because he was rescued in time, Taesu temporarily survived, but no one knew when he would wake up. When Juhi came to visit Taesu, Junha happened to be there too, and the three of them who were once close friends now faced such a tragic situation. Seeing his best friend willing to risk his life to fulfill them, and seeing Juhi caught in such a painful dilemma because of him, Junha's heart was full of guilt and sorrow. He realized deeply that perhaps he was the one who should leave, so when Juhi turned back again, Junha had already silently departed. On the doorknob hung the necklace that symbolized their promise, and Juhi understood what it meant. It was the farewell of her beloved, so she hurriedly ran outside to search for him, but could not find any trace of him. She stumbled through the crowded streets, her heart twisting in agony, tears streaming down like rain. She tried to hold on to their beautiful and youthful first love, but that familiar figure had already vanished into the vast sea of people. Juhi knew clearly that, in her current situation, she might never be able to change her fate. From that moment on, Junha disappeared as if he had evaporated from the world, and no trace of him could be found. Until one day much later, Juhi met Taesu, who had already recovered. It turned out that in order to let time heal the wounds in his heart, Junha had chosen to enlist in the army, and was about to be sent to a battlefield in a foreign land. At the crowded station, Juhi anxiously searched for Junha's figure, and by fate's arrangement, she was fortunate enough to meet him again. The long-suppressed longing erupted completely at that moment. Juhi's emotional and helpless cry struck Junha's chest like a heavy hammer again and again, making him tremble with pain. He did not dare to face her, nor did he dare to recall the past. He could only force himself to bury that love deep inside. But Juhi's heart-wrenching sobs were like sharp blades, mercilessly cutting through his defenses, and in that instant, Junha's heart felt torn and swollen with unbearable pain. Some fated bonds are destined to remain only at the moment of encounter, while some emotions cut like a knife, piercing the heart yet impossible to let go. Junha carried with him the lucky charm filled with endless longing, and silently made up his mind that if he could return alive, no matter what turmoil it caused, he would never again fail their love. But fate seemed to deliberately mock them, and during a fierce battle, his unit was forced into retreat, and just as he was about to escape successfully, an accident struck. 3 years later, when Junha was discharged, The first thing he did was meet Ju-hee, and seeing the one she loved return safely, Ju-hee burst into tears of joy, for she had always been waiting for this man she loved. But just as they were opening their hearts to each other, Junha said he was already married. And hearing this, Ju-hee's heart trembled. Tears instantly filled her eyes, and the joy of reunion was suddenly shattered. To ease the awkward atmosphere, Junha turned his head toward the nearby table and said that the piano doll on it was exquisite. But the piano model had already been moved to another table by a little boy, and he never expected that his carefully planned disguise would be broken so easily. Ju-hee instinctively waved her hand in front of his eyes, and Junha did not react at all. And at that moment she finally realized that the man she loved so deeply had already gone blind. She could no longer hold back the tears in her eyes.
왜 숨겼어? 앞을 못 본다는 거.
Junha realized his disguise had been exposed, and he hurriedly tried to leave, but in his panic, he tripped over a chair and fell to the ground. Endless sorrow surged into Ju-hee's chest like a tide, suffocating her, and she slowly helped Junha up. With trembling hands, Junha took out the necklace that Ju-hee had given him, intending to return it to her. But when Ju-hee accepted it, she did not take it back. Instead, she tenderly placed it around his neck again. For this necklace carried all their beautiful memories and bore witness to their once pure and youthful love. Later, under her family's arrangement, Ju-hee married Tae-soo, but the tears in her eyes were like sparkling pearls forever set in the frame of time. Those tears were not only traces of sorrow, but also a sea of memories filled with countless emotions, holding both her longing for their past and her regret for an unfinished love. Years later, Ju-hee often came to the river where she first met Junha, quietly lost in thought, while her daughter played alone nearby. But just as Ju-hee was still immersed in her memories, a sudden voice behind her interrupted her thoughts, and when she turned around slowly, Junha's comrades were carrying his urn toward her. In that instant, Ju-hee's heart felt struck by a heavy blow. Tears poured down uncontrollably, and she broke into sobs. It turned out that when they had last met, Junha had not been married, but because he was blind, he felt even less able to give Ju-hee happiness. To make her give up and to give her a better future, Junha chose to deceive her and bear the pain alone. And only after Ju-hee married Tae-soo did he choose to start his own family, but later, he passed away in endless darkness. His ashes were scattered at the place where they had first met, and that became their eternal regret. At the end of the story, Ju-hee's daughter Ji-hae gently told her boyfriend this heartbreaking love story. But when she turned to look at him, she found his face already covered in tears. Ji-hae thought her boyfriend was moved by the twists of the story, and her heart was filled with a sudden wave of emotion. But when Sang-min quietly removed the necklace he was wearing and revealed the pendant mentioned in the story, Ji-hae finally realized that her boyfriend was actually Junha's son. Their encounter seemed like fate's deliberate arrangement, a way to make up for the regret of their parents, and the love of Junha and Ju-hee, after countless hardships and missed chances, finally found completion in the next generation. If love is guided by destiny, then perhaps this was the most tragic, yet beautiful destiny. It prevented two lovers from being together, but brought their children together under fate's guidance, and this love transcended time and space, continuing in another form.